Good evening, everyone. Can you please find seats and we'll get started rather soon. You just give me like a thumbs up. I'll be looking for. Okay.
I don't do a lot of bright lights here.
I know. You have your sunglasses? My friend is in Berlin tonight, and I told her, please text me or email me what they're doing in Berlin for Kristallnacht. Heather Millard. You know Heather Millard?
Rita, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
She's British. Fled the Nazis when they were about to invade England to Australia. And then when the Japanese were going to attack, she came to America. Can you imagine?
She,
Jimmy Resnick's not involved very much anymore, is he? He
no,
should be. He used to raise so much money.
yeah, no, Steve is great. Steve is great.
Okay, should we watch it on our phones as well?
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Danny Peltz, and I serve as chair of this evening's Kristallnacht commemoration. Tonight, we commemorate the 83rd anniversary of Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, a profound and horrifying calamity confronting the Jews of Germany and Austria. On November 9th and 10th, 1938, hordes of thugs, hooligans, and German military flooded the streets, terrorizing Jewish communities. They ransacked Jewish homes and hospitals. They burned synagogues, desecrating Torah scrolls, holy books, and precious religious objects. They destroyed more than 7,000 Jewish businesses, and they arrested more than 30,000 Jewish men, incarcerating them in concentration camps, and murdering 91 husbands, fathers, and sons. When the smoke of the horrific Kristallnacht onslaught cleared, the level of terror in German and Austrian Jewish communities rose to unprecedented heights. Entire families worried about the fate of the men imprisoned in the camps. Mothers smuggled their children out of the country on trains to live with friends and relatives elsewhere in Europe. The rubble and ashes of their Jewish institutions and workplaces became symbols of escalating levels of hatred, discrimination, oppression, and ultimately death that they and Jews across the European continent were to face in the ensuing 7 years. We join together this evening to mourn, to grieve, and most of all, to remember. The lessons of these German pogroms and the Holocaust teach us to stand up against anti-Semitism, oppression, bigotry, and racism. Even in this period of COVID-19 and social distancing, we unite virtually to remind ourselves of the almost unimaginable dimension of our losses on Kristallnacht and throughout the Holocaust. Joining us tonight for this Kristallnacht commemoration at the Holocaust Memorial are a number of important political and civic leaders. They include State Senator Jason Pizzo, State Representative Michael Greco, Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levine Cava, Miami-Dade Commissioner Sally A. Heyman, Miami-Dade Mayor Dan Gelber, Miami Beach Commissioner Ricky Ariola, Miami Beach Commissioner Michael Gongora, Miami Beach Commissioner Stephen Miner, Miami Beach Commissioner David Richardson, and Miami Beach Commissioner Mickey Steinberg. We also want to welcome all those that are joining us virtually through the live stream. We welcome our guests here at the memorial and ask that all of you continue to wear your masks throughout the ceremony. The Holocaust Memorial, Miami Beach, was envisioned and developed by a group of founders who understood the importance of this monument to our community and led the movement for its construction. Therefore, we acknowledge the leadership of Norman Brayman, Jack Chester of blessed memory, Dr. Helen Fagan, George Goldblum of blessed memory, Selig Golan of blessed memory, Ezra Katz, Abe Resnick of blessed memory, David Schachter, Rabbi Solomon Schiff of blessed memory, Harry B. Smith of blessed memory, and Kenneth Treaster. We also proudly acknowledge the participation of Wendy Rothfield, Chair Emeritus of this event, a survivor who has played a truly meaningful and inspirational role in establishing the annual Kristallnacht observation in our community. Now, I call upon Julia Malove and Zoe Reed, students at the New World School of Arts, to lead us in the national anthem and Hatikva.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Oh Lord, balevav penima, nefesh Yehudi homia, ufaltem Mizrach kadima, hain letzion Sophia, od lo tikvatenu, hatikva bashnot apayim, liotam hofshit be'artzeinu, Eretz Zion Yerushalayim, liotam hofshit be'artzeinu, Eretz Zion Yerushalayim.
Thank you, Julia and Zoe. Good evening. My name is Sidney Pertnoy, and I have the honor of serving as chair of the Holocaust Memorial, Miami Beach. Many people question why Jewish communities around the world observe sad occasions like Kristallnacht generations after the tragedy. Life is different today, they say. We live in different times, in a different world. Why not look forward rather than looking back? The answer is that anti-Semitism did not end with the Shoah, and Holocaust distortion has found a new place in modern society. Anti-Semitism and Holocaust distortion have become niches in the everyday life of our times, in our social media, in popular entertainment, on college campuses, and within political elements of the left and the right. Holocaust distortion is a ploy used to stoke hatred of the Jewish people and Israel. Despite overwhelming historical evidence and testimony from survivors, the lies purveyed by Holocaust distorters have gained a level of credibility in the modern world. They are fueling a rising tide of anti-Semitism around the world and provoking acts of violence and destruction against Jews and Jewish communities around the world. So we gather tonight to speak the truth and illuminate the actual facts. Tonight, we assemble to condemn anti-Semitism and all forms of bigotry, discrimination, and genocide. Tonight, we declare that the legacy of the Shoah must remain in the hearts and minds of all men, women, and children, and the Nazi era must be universally reviled as the ultimate consequence of senseless hatred, cruelty, and inhumanity. The Holocaust Memorial Miami Beach is an important tool in our collective effort to transmit education of the Holocaust. Thousands of visitors come to this memorial every year and gain a deeper understanding of the Holocaust period, as well as a lasting awareness of the savage threat of genocide. Additionally, the Holocaust Memorial is involved in a year-round teaching process that extends the lessons and legacy of the Shoah to youngsters in our schools and to adults throughout our community education. We thank the voters of Miami Beach who recently and overwhelmingly approved a referendum to expand the memorial and to build a new education center that will enhance our ability to teach the lessons of the Holocaust. Another important role of the memorial is as a gathering place for Holocaust survivors now living in our community. Survivors take an active role as docents and speakers, finding comfort in the company of their peers. We honor their courage and provide special care for them as part of the Greater Miami Jewish Federation's commitment to a truly special population. This Monday marks the start of our annual Holocaust Education Week with a variety of presentations, discussions, and films that address a variety of perspectives. We invite you to register and participate in any or all of these fascinating programs. For more information about the Holocaust Education Week, visit our website at holocaustmemorialmiamibeach.org. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levine Cava, a wonderful community leader who is deeply committed to diversity and embracing tolerance among all members of our community.
Thank you so much, Sydney, for that beautiful opening and reminder of why we are all here today, as we will be every year, remembering that terrible, terrible night and all that it represented. It's 83 years since the beginning of Kristallnacht, and those were 2 days that marked the beginning of one of humanity's darkest chapters. So we're gathering here today to honor the memory of all of those who were lost in the years that followed, and to reaffirm our commitment of standing together against hatred in all its forms, both at home and abroad. I was very fortunate to have had the opportunity to have participated in visiting Holocaust sites across Europe as part of March for the Living, sponsored by Federation. And that journey was also an opportunity to think about the challenges that we face today in the 21st century, here and around the world. In our own country, we know that we have not yet fully lived up to our founding belief that all people are created equal. And it can sometimes feel as though the tide of progress is at its ebb. that the gains that we have fought for since the night of broken glass are eroding. Over the last few years in particular, we have seen a deeply troubling increase of hate crimes against people of Jewish faith. And along with that, an increase in hate crimes for many, many other groups, including our own Black Americans, Asian American Pacific Islanders, and LGBTQ communities. And still, through all this darkness and all this difficulty, we must remember that these setbacks are just that, setbacks on the road to inherent human progress, that we are on a spiral towards greater humanity, acceptance, and love, but it is not a straight line. And we have the power to continue to turn the tide towards greater inclusivity, equity, and opportunity for all. We have so much more in common than what divides us. We all know that. And especially here in Miami-Dade County, such a rich and diverse place where we have the good fortune to spend our lives. This is a community that is made up of people from around the world, and one that is also very receptive to learning about the Holocaust through the great work of so many of you here today. And we know that this education is critically important, especially as the survivors of the Holocaust transition and are no longer able to communicate one-on-one, which is the most effective kind of education that does exist. But we do all know that we share a common fate, and an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. And so we must stand up for everyone who is the subject of hatred, fear, and cynicism. We must not allow ourselves to respond to that hatred and ugliness with the same. We must respond with love, grace, and compassion. We must seek to build bridges and find common ground so that our entire community can climb together to that higher ground. That is truly what will lift us forward. As we look for ways to deeply engage and promote a message of tolerance and inclusion, we take hands with our brothers and sisters, especially here at this beautiful memorial that stands in testimony to the struggles. And I remain as optimistic as ever that we will overcome this division. And it is thanks to so many leaders, yourselves here with us today and virtually and across our entire community, learning in the schools, learning in your places of worship, learning through breaking bread together. So as mayor, I am so proud, the first Jewish mayor of Miami-Dade County. I am so very, very proud to fight each and every day to uplift the values of inclusion, tolerance, and equity, and to welcome beloved members to our community from all walks of life, and to know that it is possible, that we will overcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Levine Cava. It is my honor now to introduce our good friend and true partner, Miami Beach Mayor Dan Gelber. Mayor Gelber and his family have been lifelong champions of the important work at the Holocaust Memorial, and we are grateful for his tremendous cooperation.
Thanks, Dan. So I'm Dan Gelber, I'm the mayor of Miami Beach, and I am a proud Zionist. And I don't say that simply because I know it's a crowd that will favorably receive it. I decided some time ago that I would say it every time I stand here and give a speech at the beginning of the speech. And the reason I want to say it, and the reason why I think it is so important that it be said, is that the word Zionist has become a slur in a lot of places in our country, on our college campuses, in my daughter's college campuses where they attended. And the idea that it could grow out of anti-Semitism and it becomes something that is actually something people think is a negative is something that we have to fight about every day. And for me, being here today and speaking to you and standing up and speaking up is part of the journey to make sure that the world understands that when people do things and say things intended to diminish who you are, the first thing you must do is stand up and say, I am proud of who I am. I am proud of being a Zionist. I am proud of being a Jew. And I want my family and everybody around here to feel precisely the same way. Now, we are standing just over where the new place is going to be is Pride Park. And I believe as a mayor that it's important for me rarely to ever say I. I'm a believer in we. And all of my colleagues are here today. Most of them are here. And frankly, everything we do as a group. So it's a we, not an I. But when we decided to name Pride Park, you had to submit your applications citywide. And I happened to submit Pride Park name. So it was actually me. Sorry, everybody else. Okay. And in my mind, very clearly, it was obviously the LGBTQ community, which pride is something that is so important. And they have, I think, rightfully taken that because who they are is so important. And standing up and being proud of yourself is so important. But as I thought about it, I said, it's so great that the Holocaust Memorial is on the other side. Because what greater sort of group and idea to be part of, to circumscribe Pride Park than this idea that we have to stand up every day and be proud. Because I can tell you what I do as mayor. Every time I see an incident or hear about an incident against Jews, against a synagogue, against Israel, I call up our finance director and I say, how much more room do we have to invest in Israeli bonds? Because I think it's great to have words, but I think it's equally, if not much more important, to have actions. So I think as Jews, we have to not simply say, yeah, this is, hate is terrible, but we're going to do something about hate. We're going to stand up. We're going to be heard. We're going to pronounce and proclaim our pride. We're going to invest where we can because hate is here to stay, and this is not a journey that has an end point. It just isn't. You know, on the ballot, as Sydney pointed out, is this amazing expansion of this very special place at 1945 Alden Road, Meridian Avenue, 1945 Meridian Avenue, a terrific end date of the Holocaust in this address. But right over there is going to be this incredible expansion, and we put it on the ballot. I actually opened up a PAC in my name, and I asked Norman Brayman to fund it, which he did. And we sent out a lot of nice mailers to let people know what we were doing and what Ezra Katz and Norman Brayman and the Federation and others want to do there. And it's really quite incredible, by the way, if you don't know. They're going to have 3 beautiful areas that are going to be buildings that are going to allow for more education, more exhibits, more exposition, and also holographic renderings of survivors who you'll be able to ask questions to forever. And it's really quite amazing. And when he asked me, what do we need to fund it with, I said, we could do nothing and it will pass. It needed 60%. We put it at the top of the ballot because we figured it would be overwhelmingly popular. Also on the ballot was the expansion, and the other city property that we had on the ballot was the Smith and Walensky lease on First Street, because they also wanted to expand their lease. This is an expansion on city property. Well, you'll be very happy to know this expansion passed with 79%, which is a pretty overwhelming majority. Smith and Walensky passed with over 80%. And the reason I bring it up is when I called Mr. Brayman up and I told him we were at 79%, we had an immediately discussion about who the 21% were in the city who didn't support it. But the truth of the matter is, and it's really something you should think about, over 20% of the people, even here, weren't sure that they were ready to continue helping out this memorial. And although I love all my residents, I think some of them need to understand how important this is. And the fact that the Smith and Walensky lease did even better was even more discouraging to me. So I guess the point I want to make is that while we are here remembering an event that happened in 1939, what we need to do is make sure it has vitality today and tomorrow. And that is what we, as those who occupy the present, must do. As Elie Wiesel said, when you don't record, all those people die all over again. He used to say that a million different ways. And I believe that, and I think we all do. So thank you for having me. Thank you to all the folks that are doing this. Thank you to Ezra. Thank you to the Federation. Thank you to Mr. Brayman. Thank you all. Let's move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Gelber. As we continue with our program, I invite Francine Burns, a docent of the Holocaust Memorial, to present a dramatic reading. Her reading will be followed by a musical interlude by Kenneth Jones, a student at the New World School of the Arts, that will express the introspective and solemn themes of the Kristallnacht anniversary.
Thank you. Arnold Rosenfield wrote this to his son, who was living in Haifa. The blessed house was attacked. All of its windows were shattered, its benches broken, the parochet ripped to shreds, and the Torah scrolls hurled outside. The entire contents of the synagogue were destroyed. The Torahs were thrown to the ground and ripped, and 3 scrolls were taken, along with the Holy Ark. All night long, we could hear the screams of the victims. Bertha Engelhard remembered the sadness of that day. Father came home ashen-faced because one of his customers, who he had gone to deliver laundry to, had committed suicide, both he and his wife. 500 Jews were arrested in Munich on November 10th. During the day, it was announced that all the Jews in the city had 48 hours to leave Germany. Some tried to drive away from the city in their cars, but the petrol stations refused to serve them with petrol. It was 100 miles to the Swiss border, but the Gestapo seized many passports so that the foreign consulates in the city were unable to issue visas. When asked where they could go without passports, the Gestapo replied, as reported by a British journalist in the city, "Well, they will have to shoot you all at the frontier." Many grocers and bakers put signs in their windows announcing that they would not sell food to Jews. Among the Jews in Munich that day was Emil Kramer, a partner in the largest remaining Jewish banking firm in Germany. As the bank windows were smashed and the Germans took control of the building, he committed suicide by jumping out of the window of his apartment. Or so the German media reported. Within a few days, the Berlin correspondent of a British newspaper wrote that the banking circles in Germany were wondering how Kramer had managed to commit suicide by jumping out of a window, as the aged banker had been paralyzed for 2 years and could scarcely walk with the aid of 2 sticks.
Thank you, Francine and Kenneth. The Reign of Terror, known as Kristallnacht, the German pogroms, preceded the Nazi campaign of death and destruction that spread to Jewish communities well beyond that November. Our knowledge of what took place between November 9, 1938, and the end of World War II is greatly enhanced by the testimony of our beloved Holocaust survivors. Their recounting of experiences during the Shoah allow us to truly perceive the depth of despair and loss and the unfathomable numbers of death and destruction cannot possibly convey. As the aging generation of survivors dwindles, it is our obligation to remember and retell their stories to perpetuate the lessons and legacy of the Holocaust. Among our survivor community here in Miami, few are more knowledgeable about the history and tragedies of the Holocaust than Dr. Miriam Klein-Kastanoff. Born in Czechoslovakia, Miriam, her parents, and infant brother fled Nazi Europe in 1941. They remained on the run and in hiding for 7 months, during which they had several narrow escapes, including an arrest in Spain. The Klein family reached Lisbon, Portugal, where they joined tens of thousands of Jewish refugees awaiting ships to the United States. Today, Miriam is the founding director of the University of Miami Holocaust Teachers Institute, the Holocaust Education Specialist for Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and the Education Chair of the Holocaust Memorial. Her dedication to the teaching of the lessons and legacy of the Holocaust is a blessing for our community.
I will never forget, young as I was, the night the Hungarian Nazi-trained police banged on our family door on a Shabbat evening in 1940 and took my father, Rabbi Maurice Klein, to a Hungarian Nazi-run forced labor camp, Sharash Patak. How could I forget that night 2 years after Kristallnacht? My mother's screaming voice and suddenly hiding me in a closet. Why, I asked. Why did this happen? Why was my dad taken? And why did I have to hide? Because we are Jews, my mother said. And that was my first introduction and confrontation with anti-Semitism. I will never forget in November 1940, when my father, looking gaunt and worn, rushed in the door and said that he had escaped the camp and that we had to immediately leave Košice, Slovakia. He said, we have to run because if he was caught, it would be ultimate death. He, as other Orthodox Jews in the camp, had learned through a network of information that ultimately Jews would be taken throughout Eastern Europe to ghettos and camps, and most likely to their death. Thus began the journey we were to take alone as a very small family unit. My mother, Sarah, my father, Maurice, me, named Marika at that time, a small little girl, and our new infant baby, my brother, Tibor, of 9 months old, known to most of you in the Miami community as the late federal Judge Ted Klein. A harrowing journey of 7 months through 7 countries on foot and on train. Our goal? To reach Lisbon, Portugal, where there were ships waiting, sponsored by the Hayas, the Hebrew Immigration Aid Society, to take Jews to safety if one could only make it to Lisbon with all the challenges of that journey. I will never forget my mother taking me to her twin sister Lily and begging her to come with her husband and her 2 small children, my little cousins, and said, Lily, we have to go. And I will never forget Lily saying, are you crazy? What will happen to me staying here will happen to you on the road. I stay, she said. And there is the answer to the often asked question, why didn't the Jews just leave? As the scholar Dr. Michael Birnbaum says, the pessimists left and the optimists stayed, and they were murdered. So we left without them. I never saw my Aunt Lily again, or my cousins, and my mother spent her life right here in Miami Beach, screaming with nightmares for her twin sister Lily, who we are certain now died in the fires of Auschwitz. And so we left Košice, Slovakia. We had passenger reservation to board the Nyasa ship due to leave Lisbon on April 15, 1941. So we had to be in Lisbon by that date. However, as we were rushing and running to make the deadline, our visa entry papers into Lisbon expired on January 18, 1941, due to train delays and many more unexpected events. We missed the deadline by 2 days. Thus, we arrived in the border town of Badajoz, Spain on January 20th, 1941, and found ourselves hopelessly and frustratingly stopped in our journey. The border guards in Spain often sent Jews back to their countries. They were deeply anti-Semitic. However, they could be bribed. And so my father took the last of his money and he bribed them to let us stay in a hotel in Spain until we could figure out a way either to go into Lisbon or, God forbid, back to Slovakia. While in that hotel in Badajoz, my father met a sympathetic, non-Nazi German tourist who helped my dad dictate a letter to the Jewish community of Lisbon. Allow me to read you a piece of this letter. We are a Jewish family from Hungary on the way to the United States. We are trying to escape to freedom. Unfortunately, our Portuguese visa ran only till the 18th of January, and because of train delays, which have consumed days and nights, we only arrived here on the 20th in the city and cannot proceed any further. We are interred in this hotel. We are here with 2 small children, a 5-year-old girl and a baby boy of 10 months. The children suffer from hunger. We are used to hunger. We are used to hunger, but my children are not. It is tragic to see them, the innocent children, starving. Hence, if it is possible, please help your Jewish brothers because the situation is desperately tragic. We are not even in a situation to pay for the hotel because our money is gone. We have money in a Lisbon bank, but we can't get to the money. Please, my Jewish brothers, please attempt to help me. It appears from the chronology of this letter that we were very soon afterwards indeed allowed to enter Lisbon. So now it is February 15th, 1941. We finally arrived in Lisbon after running throughout Eastern Europe, always one step ahead of the Nazis. No, we went through Hungary, Yugoslavia, Italy, France, and Spain. We had been on the road for 3 months, and as previously mentioned, the Nyasa ship was leaving on April 15th, so we had time to make the ship, for which we had verified passage, but just not the entire paid ticket, which was at that time $1,000. In addition, we now had one more serious problem. Our visa entry papers due to the United States were going to expire on March 31st. We were put into a tourist hotel on the outskirts of Portugal. For me, as a child, my memories are of much anxiety, fear, and insecurity, listening to my parents speaking and whispering at night in Yiddish and Hungarian about what would become of us. My mother even thought about giving me and my brother away just so we would be saved. The government officials, according to one testimony I read, were wanting to put all of us refugees in prison, but the local Jewish community leaders of Lisbon, small as they were, about 1,500 Jews, prevailed and convinced the authorities to place us in small hotels till our ships came. I remember my dad and my mom every day going into Lisbon, leaving me as a small child to watch over the baby, Tibor, while they went to wait in line with other Jewish refugees at the council. But as we watched from the shore, the ship for which we had reservations sailed without us. Our visa papers had not arrived. Finally, on May 15, 1941, a ship came. We boarded the Ciudad de Sevilla. The Hayas had arranged this passage. It was a huge passenger and cargo liner, one of the last few ships to leave Lisbon carrying Jews to safety in 1941. Had it been just 6 months later, January 42, the final solution was planned to murder all the Jews of Europe. We had made it just in time. I quote to you from my mother's memories and from a book written by Gloria Goldreich. The dangers that lay ahead from the moment we left Lisbon and boarded the ship assaulted the passengers from the first day at sea. Rumors circulated there was a shortage of drinking water. Passengers panicked as distraught mothers worried about their small children. The ship could not sail a direct course because the German Navy had turned the Atlantic Ocean into a maritime battlefield. Submarines lurked beneath rising and falling waves, stalking freighters and passenger ships. The seas turned turbulent, and the ship plowed through storms, heaving dangerously from side to side. Many were sick from the turbulence, and when the storm subsided and the sea was calm, the observant Jews were seen on the deck, as I remember my father was, putting on his talit, his prayer shawl, and praying to God to get us to safety after all we had been through, just not to die on the ship and be thrown into the ocean. My mother was terrified, I remember, and she did not let me out of her sight. All this I remember. Finally, our family realized New York, New Jersey, we had arrived safely in America. So, what became of the Klein family left behind? Of the 15,000 Jews of my hometown, Košice, 12,000 were immediately gassed upon their arrival on a transport in 1944 in Auschwitz, the same transport Elie Wiesel was on. 300 Jews returned to Košice immediately after the war, and among them, 6 of the Klein family, who all ultimately immigrated to Israel, Bolivia, and the United States. But no, we never heard from Aunt Lily or her 2 girls, my cousins, gone to the fires of Auschwitz. As I stand before you now, I am the only one left. Rabbi Klein, my dad's gone, Sarah's gone, Ted's gone, Lily's gone. I'm the only one left. of this family who ran, hid, and escaped the Holocaust. I'm still standing. Why have I been spared in these last years of deep losses? I do not know, but I must only assume it is to educate and to tell the story to you so you then won't forget. I once heard another refugee child survivor of the Holocaust say, "The experience of my parents is woven through the fabric of my soul, and I am compelled to tell it to the world and to you tonight." Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. In sad occasions like this one, we find comfort and purpose in our faith. Joining us tonight to share a rabbinic perspective at Kristallnacht is Rabbi Frederick Klein, Executive Vice President of the Rabbinic Association of Greater Miami and Director of Federation's Mishkan Miami program.
I really don't know how you follow such powerful comments of Miriam, and I'm humbled to share some words of Torah tonight with all of you. Kristallnacht, broken glass, broken hopes, broken dreams. Why do we continue to remember this event, one of the thousands of stories? We just heard one. 1,000 events in the Holocaust. If we were to commemorate every event of the Holocaust, there would not be a day which would not have commemorations. The crying, the tears would never end. What is crying? Allow me to offer an explanation. When we cry, for whom do we cry? Perhaps on Yom HaShoah and other days of the year, we cry, like we heard, for our families. We cry for what we as a people have lost. These are the cries of people mourning, of any person that is facing such horror. These are cries of despair, and these are very, very human cries. But perhaps we can add that our crying today is also of a different order. They are also cries of conscience. On Kristallnacht, we cry for a society which allows such hatred to fester. We cry for a world that is so broken that violence can happen and no one even speaks out. The violence was committed not only by the Nazis, but also those who remained silent. We cry on behalf of all of those who should have cried and did not. We cry for all of those people, and it's a cry of conscience. This crying is unique, it's redemptive, and it's a key to who we are as a holy people. God tells Abraham at the beginning of our history a very dark truth. Yadoa Teda, know this, that you will be a stranger in a strange land, and they will oppress you. However, in the crucible of Egypt, we were transformed. Our hearts were not constricted. Our hearts were expanded at that moment. Our Torah teaches us, love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. We allowed ourselves to cry for a world that does not love the strangers in their midst. We cry collectively for a world that is still broken, and yet people do not have the compassion to see the suffering of our fellow human beings. And I think this is the key. This is the secret to Jewish history, to Jewish values. Our crying has a double nature. Yom HaShoah is the very human cry of despair, of our loss, of our mourning. But perhaps Kristallnacht is the redemptive cry of conscience. When we cry like this, our hearts open up to all those people in this world that are crying, to our fellow human beings that are suffering. This, in my humble estimate, is the unique crying of today, a cry for conscience, a holy cry, a cry that pierces the heavens, a cry that demands a response. And all of us here tonight are part of that response. In our crying for the world, we commit ourselves never to be silent when we see hatred of violence against our people or against our fellow human being, wherever they are. We will hear the cries of others, and in doing so, we will address the broken glasses that are here right now in our world every day. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may these be your will, God. Amen.
On this solemn Kristallnacht anniversary, we remember the 6 million victims of the Holocaust in prayer. El Maleh Rachamim, a prayer for the souls of the departed, will be chanted by Cantor Norman Cohen Fala of Temple Sinai of North Dade. It will be followed by the recitation of the Kaddish, an affirmation of our continuing belief in God, led by Holocaust survivor David Schachter and Rabbi Frederick Klein.
This prayer has been recited for so many years by our beloved Rabbi Solomon Schiff, Zichrono Livracha, and this is it's been an honor, and I'm deeply humbled to be able to lead this prayer tonight, in the hope that I could convey the words of this important prayer as Rabbi Schiff used to do. Maleh Rachamim Shochen Bameromim Hametzeh Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina Ve'malot Kedoshim U'Tehorim Esoar Harakia Mazirim Eden Nishemot 6 מיליון אחינו ואחיותינו שנהרגו, שנשחטו, שנשרפו ושנספו על קידוש השם בידי המרצחים הגרמנים הנאצים ועוזריהם משאר העמים. לכן בעל הרחמים יסירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור החיים את נשמתם אדוני הוא נחלתם וינוחו בשלום על משכבם ונאמר אמן.
ויתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ומי ומיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי דקודשה ברכו, לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירם בעלמא ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ויאמרו אמן.
On behalf of the Holocaust Memorial Miami Beach, we thank all of you who joined us this evening, whether in person or online through the live stream. We also would like to thank Sharon Horowitz and her team for everything she does, not only for an event like tonight, but every day at the memorial. We conclude this Kristallnacht commemoration with the singing of the Hymn of the Partisans, led by cantor Norman Cohen-Falla. This song was written in Yiddish by Hirsch Glick of the Vilna Jewish United Partisans Organization. Its words are a testimony to the Jewish suffering and sacrifice for liberty. The hymn praises heroism and speaks to us today as an anthem of freedom. We ask you all to please rise.
Zod niet pijn, nu las du geest am letzten Weg. Hot schiem im Leine, verstellen loje Tag. Kommen wird noch unser Eus gewähnte Schau. Sveta poikt an unser Trott mir seinen Do. Kommen wird noch unser Eus gewähnte Schau. Sveta poikt an unser Trott mir seinen Do. Und grünen Palmenland bis weißen Land und Schnee. Wir kommen an mit unser Pein, mit unser Weh. Und wo gefallen sich ein Spritz für unser Blut, sprotzen wird dort unser Gore, unser Wut. Und wo gefallen sich ein Spritz für unser Blut, sprotzen wird dort unser Gore, unser Wut. Wird die Morgens und begilden uns dem Feind, und der Nächte wird verschwinden mit dem Feind. Nur euch versammeln wird die Sonne und dem Kajor, wie a Parol soll gehen das Lied von Dor zu Dor. Nur euch versammeln wird die Sonne und dem Kajor, wie a Parol soll gehen das Lied von Dor zu Dor. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Blei. Ist nicht kein Leben von a Vogel läuft der frei. Das hat so Volk zwischen fallen die gewähnt. Das Lied gesungen mit Naganes in die Hand. Das hat so Volk zwischen fallen die gewähnt. Das Lied gesungen mit Naganes in die Hand. Das hat nicht kein und lass du gehst im letzten Weg. Hat schieb im Leine verstellen loje Tag. Kommen wird noch unser Eus gewähnte Schau. Sveta poikt an unser Trott mir seinen da. Kommen wird noch unser Eus gewähnte Schau. Sveta poikt an unser Trott mir seinen da.
It was